Hey friends, today I'm going to be creating a Memorydex card holder using a tray from the Dollar Tree. The original audio for this video was like distorted, so I'm trying my hand at my first ever voiceover, so please bear with me as I've never done one before. But I'm going to be using this wooden tray from the Dollar Tree, and I will be covering up those star cutouts on the inside with a piece of chipboard so that I have a sturdy place to glue my straws. We are also going to be adding in some paper, and also we're going to be laying down some paint to add like a border. So I'm trying to decide between the teal blue there and the gold. I think they both will go very nicely with the paper that I chose, but ultimately I've decided to go with the gold. I also have my paintbrush. I've got my straws. I have some wax paper to paint on. I've got my art glitter glue. I've got a soft measuring tape and my regular ruler there. I have a piece of chipboard, and also I'm showing you there how I'm going to be using that chipboard to cover up the inside to make it sturdy for my straws. I was worried that the straws would poke through the star and not have enough of like stability when I glued them in, so that's why I decided to add in the chipboard on either side. I am going to be using this beautiful floral pattern from Maggie Holmes. This is from Garden Party, which is my favorite collection. I love using this for everyday crafting and for spring crafting. It also has this beautiful pink grid on the back that I'm going to be using as well. So let's go ahead and get all of these things moved out of the way, and we can go ahead and get started painting our tray. So I'm just going to go ahead and move those items out of my way to make a little bit more room for painting. And I think the gold is going to look really nice with that paper, a little pop of color. And I'm just showing you, I'm just double checking that I want to use that gold. And yes, I decided to use the gold there. I think gold goes really well with Maggie Holmes collections. Here I'm showing you that I'm just going to cover the top part of the box, the entire bottom of the box with that gold paint. And I'm going to do a border around all four sides of the box. Just a note that you will, just a note that I would go ahead and add that gold paint into the inside of the four sides as well as the bottom part, so that you have that border in the inside as well. I'm showing you that the measurement of the box there is 1 3/4 by 6 3/4, and that I do plan on cutting my paper 1/8 of an inch smaller to have that little bit of a gold border showing. So let's go ahead and get started on painting. There I'm showing you I'm just going to be using a scrap piece of the Dollar Tree flexible cutting mat for adding my paint down on so I don't make too big of a mess on my desk. And also, I think that having something like that works better than putting your paint directly on your project or on the wax paper. So I'm going to go ahead and start adding the paint on the top lip of the box. And I'm not being too mindful of like putting a thick layer of paint down. I actually want a little bit of the wood grain to show in my project, which I'm showing you here, how a little bit of the wood grain is showing. And I actually like that look. I think it gives it a little bit more of a rustic look. If you wanted to have like a very substantial amount of gold, you would need to do multiple layers, um, so that none of that wood grain showed. But I was using a light amount of paint on my brush and kind of like doing like a dry brush or a like a white wash type painting on there so that I wasn't getting too much paint, just enough that the gold would show. I'm going to continue doing that on the sides of the box, just adding it like a half an inch in or so, just to make sure that the paint is underneath the paper, so that none of the bare wood shows if I cut my paper off a little bit. So you don't have to be too perfect. You don't have to waste paint and paint the whole thing. But if you wanted to paint the whole thing, you could. But I'm just adding that border on all four sides and then going through and adding that on each side of the box. I did not do this, but I would go ahead and add that paint the same way in the inside four sides as well as on the bottom of your box. I did not do that, and I wish I had have done that after the fact. Excuse me. So I have my box all painted. I've painted the bottom. I didn't want to waste putting paper on there. So that is all dry. So we can go ahead and start adding our paper in there. We can also go ahead and add that chipboard there, which would measure 4.5 by 1 3/4. And I want to go ahead and paint. I want to go ahead and not paint. I want to go ahead and cut my chipboard to that size there, and I want to cut it to the full size, and then just go ahead and trim a little bit off of the chipboard so that I have a good, nice, snug fit. If I was to cut it that 1/8 of an inch smaller, then it wouldn't cover that. I really want to have a very nice, snug fit on both of those sides with the stars. Here I am going in with my pencil and using the chipboard and the tray and tracing a line where the chipboard is sticking up above the tray so that I have a kind of a guideline for when I am cutting it. That kind of gives me that straight line guide as well, because I'm horrible at cutting straight lines on paper, let alone chipboard. Excuse me. So I'm just adding that back in, doing a little bit of trimming and finessing the chipboard to make it fit exactly like I want it to here. And I'm doing that off camera. It's really difficult to trim that chipboard. So I bring it close to me and to trim it. And here I'm telling you that there is just a little bit more sticking up at the top that I want to trim, testing it out to make sure I like how it looks. And then we're going to use that original piece to make a line on the other piece of chipboard for that guideline so that I could go ahead and trim it. Here I'm testing, making sure it fits nicely, and then we are going to do the top part using that piece and my pencil and making a line there. And then I'm just doing some trimming, getting these two pieces ready. Another thing I wish I had done was either paint the chipboard before I put it in, or better yet, I would have liked to have wrapped my paper around it to give it a clean edge. Because I did not do that. You could see the raw chipboard. So I am going to go back in with some paint and cover that up, but I think it would have looked really nice if I had have wrapped a little piece of paper around that to kind of cover the raw edge. So I went ahead and used my art glitter glue and attached those chipboards. I was using those Dollar Tree clamps just to hold that one side for it to glue, um, so that it stayed really nicely there at the top and the sides. So now we're going to go ahead and start cutting out our pattern paper while that dries. And I'm going to, again, I'm going to be cutting the paper a 1/8 of an inch shorter. So our box is 6 3/4 long. So I'm going to be cutting it 6 5/8 to kind of give that border. And for the top, which is 1 3/4, I'm going to be doing 1 5/8. So here I'm just going to be cutting those papers to sizes, being mindful of how my pattern is because I want to make sure that lengthwise matches up to my box. I'm being very cautious about those cuts because I do not want to waste this beautiful paper. And now I'm going to be trimming it down to 1 5/8. And I like to go ahead and test this out on the box to see if I need to do any trimming before I go ahead and commit to trimming all of the pieces. So we're going to go ahead and now that that chipboard is dry, we're going to go ahead and test this out to see if I need to make any adjustments. And I think I like how that looks. I could have trimmed the top and bottom, maybe just a tiny bit, or trimmed one of the top or bottoms just a little bit. I'm remeasuring my box, just making sure my cuts are good before I commit to this. I'm just commenting there how I could have maybe trimmed a little bit more off of that top or bottom to have a little bit more border, but ultimately I like how that was. So now I'm moving on to trimming the two short sides and the two short sides that are covered with the chipboard in the inside. So those pieces are going to be cut to 1 5/8 by 4 5/8. So we're going to go ahead and trim all of those and get those ready for gluing to our box. Here I'm just again testing it out, making sure it looks good, making sure I like the cuts, and we're going to go ahead and start attaching that using my wet glue, my art glitter glue. You could use any kind of glue for this you would like. I just thought that the art glitter glue was a good choice because then I had a chance to kind of move this around if I didn't like the exact placement of the paper. So I'm going to add that first piece down there on the side. And then I'm going in with my Cricut scraper just to make sure that I get that paper nice and adhered to the wood, making sure I concentrate on those edges, getting them down nice and smooth, spreading that glue out as well so it's not like lumpy underneath of that kind of pale pink paper there. And that looks good. And now I'm going to move on to the rest of them. Like magic, it is completely covered with the beautiful paper on the outside on all four sides. I think this is really pretty. I like the two papers together. And now we are going to be moving on to covering the inside. And I still need to cut that inside piece to go on the bottom. I was waiting to do that till after I'd had that chipboard in. So here I'm going to be measuring with my soft, flexible measuring tape so that I can get a good number on what I need to cut. I like using the soft measuring tape to get into my boxes like this because you really can't get your ruler down in there unless you have a short ruler. But I'm just kind of double checking, making sure that I'm double checking those numbers. So, measure twice, cut once kind of thing. So we are going to be cutting those inside papers ultimately there at the bottom to 4 3/8 by 6 3/8. And here I'm using one of the pieces that I'd already pre-cut, and it needs to be cut down a little bit. So our short side measures 4 3/8 by 1 5/8, and our long side's going to measure 1 5/8 by 6 3/8. So I have cut those pieces down to have them ready for our sides, and now I need to concentrate on that bottom piece. So there I have the bottom piece cut and glued, and my sides glued in there. It's like magic, y'all. Just magically appears glued. So here I am talking about how I wish I had have either wrapped that chipboard with paper or added some of that gold paint. I think the wrapping of the paper would have given it a more finished look than even the paint would. But since I did not do that and they're glued, I'm going to go ahead and add some gold paint to that. And here I'm showing you in the inside where I did not add that paint. You can see a little bit of the bare wood. So if you don't want to see that in the inside, then make sure you add that little bit of a border on all four of the inside sides as well as the bottom. But this is going to be full of Memorydex cards by the end, so you're really not going to see that bottom. It's more the raw chipboard that is um, bothering me, and I will definitely be adding some gold to kind of cover that up and help that not look so unfinished. So now that we had everything glued in there, it's time to measure our straws. I did a little pre-cutting of my straws to 6.5. But now that we have that chipboard in there, of course, they will need to be cut down a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my straw down onto one side of the inside and then kind of catty corner it up and then use my pencil to make a little mark there where it's flush with that chipboard. And I'm just going to make that mark with my pencil. And then I'm going to cut before the pencil mark because you can always cut a little bit more, but you can't add more back. I'm going to test it out. It needs a little bit more trim. So I'm going to go right before that pencil line, but I actually don't cut on the pencil line. And that actually fits very nicely in there, cutting right before the pencil line, which I'm showing you there. If I had a cut on that pencil line, my straws would have been a little bit too short. I want them to be a little snug, but not too snug where the straws are bending. So now I'm going to use the straw that is at the length that I want as a guide to cut my other straw, just holding them nice and firm together. And then I'm going to put both of them in here and test that one out there. And they both are working good. Now it's time to assemble. So I do have my hot glue gun on. I had not mentioned that earlier in the video, but I think hot glue is going to be the best way to add in the straws. So I'm using this beautiful Memorydex from that I received from my birthday from Gloria. I will make sure to link her channel down below for you guys so you can go over and check her out. She sent that to me in my first ever birthday challenge that I hosted 2 years ago. And I have it on my Heidi Swap Memorydex holder in here in my craft room. So I'm just going to add the one straw down in there, add that Memorydex onto the straw, the one straw, kind of position the Memorydex in the middle of my box. So I have a little leeway on each side if I happen to stick anything out on one side or the other, or if my Memorydex is a little bit more larger than Gloria's. And then I'm going to add in my second Memorydex, or the second straw. And I'm just doing a little finessing there. You don't want your straw to be touching the bottom of the box, but you want it, down in the box. And I'm just checking to make sure that they're moving well, that the Memorydex is moving well. And then I am using my pencil to kind of make a little mark above the straw on both sides there. Excuse my head. So I'm marking that on both sides to use as a guide when I go back to glue my straws in. So it is time to go ahead and glue these straws in, and we are almost finished with our box. Here I'm showing you up close my very messy pencil marks there, which will be covered up by the straws and the glue. So for my first straw, I went ahead and put the hot glue on the straw directly and then put it in my box. Big mistake. Please learn from my mistake. This left a trail of glue as I was putting it into my box and made a mess. And I tried to get the glue off and ripped my paper. Excuse me, there's my head again. So the next time I use my glue in those guidelines and put the glue gun directly on my guidelines and then added my straws so there wasn't such a mess of the trail of glue. So I don't have to worry about covering that up. So definitely learn from mistake. Add your hot glue directly on to your marks that you made for where you want to put your straws. So I'm just cleaning up glue strings and letting that dry for a minute. And now I'm going to go back in with my glue gun. It's not going to be neat or pretty, but I want to go ahead and reinforce the tops of my straws because if you're taking your Memorydex card in and out, you're going to be pulling up, not really down too much. I am also trying to get underneath of my straw as best that I can to add a little bit more stability and kind of surround that straw with glue. Again, it's not beautiful. Um, you could probably use wet glue for this, but I feel like the hot glue is going to be more sturdy in the long run. And it's going to be covered up with Memorydex cards, so it's not a big deal to me. And hot glue's clear, so it's fine. So here I'm trying to clean up that glue, the glue stripe there from when it smeared when I was putting the first straw on. And I will be covering these up with some stickers off camera, just adding a little bit more decorations to it, kind of covering up my boo-boo because it was bugging me. Um, But yeah, definitely put your glue on your mark in your box and then add your straws to that because we will be adding extra glue anyway. So here is the test to see if the Memorydex card will fit and I glued the straws on correctly. And yes, it works nicely. It's a little bit kind of wiggly, but the straws stayed in place when I removed the Memorydex. I don't know if it'll last forever. Like if you are taking your Memorydex cards on and off a lot, then they may eventually wear. Here's I'm showing you my little rip in the paper there and how I'm going to be adding some stickers from the collection to kind of conceal my mistakes. After the video was over, I also added some little wooden beads to the bottom to give the box some height and a little bit more decoration. So that turned out cute. I added some little wooden beads to it. But yeah, that concludes the video. Um, I think this turned out super cute. Um, I really think this is a fun project. This is going to be super cute sitting on my desk and being able to add these Memorydex in throughout the month and record memories throughout the year. This is going to be such a neat series to share with you guys and create these Memorydexes. So if you create a box, I would love for you to share with us. You can tag me over on Instagram at wannabe mermaid, or you can leave me a picture down in the comments and or tag me to your video if you create a box. Let me see your creation if you create one of these. I